So hi, Ed. Yeah, you're muted. I don't know if you can find the mute button. Yeah, if you hover your mouse in the upper right corner. Oh, there's Dave Menzies. And for me, the upper right corner, when I hover my mouse up there, I hit a mute. I have a mute and an unmute choice. So, and David, you're on mute. Yay, David's off mute. Yay. And Ed, you still seem to be on mute.
Hello, hello.
Oh, look at that. Yay, we have Ed. We have David. I did not get a confirmation back from, I spoke with Connor, and Connor has a job, his times for his job has changed, so he doesn't get off until 6. He'll join us at 6. And I did send the text and leave a voicemail for Jeff Collins and Michael Castiglione, so I didn't hear back from either of them, but I left them a text and a voicemail. Plus, they would have gotten Ashley's email the other day, just as you guys did. So we're definitely going to have Connor, but we won't have him until 6 o'clock. I will start out by asking both of you, though, given that 5:30, because Connor's schedule has changed, if we were to move our meeting back and we had a choice of 6, 6:30, or 7, would it be, what would be most convenient for everybody here? So we could get Connor. We can't get Connor at 5:30.
6:30 sounds okay to me.
I don't care.
Okay. So David, your choice would be 6:30.
Right.
Yeah,
Okay.
6:30 is good.
You say 6:30, Ed?
Yeah.
6:30. Next meetings. So until further notice. Notice equals 6:30. And Ashley, are you there? I know you're town of Woodstock, and I know you're on mute. Are you there, Ashley? Well, she doesn't have to be here. She got us all in. So Ashley, if you're there, let us know.
I'm here, Laura. Just doing school too.
I'm sorry. What's that, Ashley?
Doing school too with my son. So.
Oh yeah. Well, good for you. Good for you. As if a mom didn't have enough to juggle, right? You're now you're the teacher. So yes. So we're going to change our next meetings. Are going to be 6:30, and I know that you had only scheduled us for Zoom through June, but what is the current thought about how long committees are going to Zoom?
They haven't really given us an idea of that yet. I think the last they were saying was they were anticipating phase 4 sometime in July. I would have to touch base with Bill and see what phase Ulster County is including meetings like this.
Well, let me ask Ed and David, because even when we're allowed to go back and meet at the Cuomo, would you guys rather Zoom? Because, and I'm in a risk group, right? I actually do turn 65 at the end of this year. And so even though 65 and up is a risk group, and I'm not quite there yet, I figure I'm close enough. So like, I figure I'm in a risk group. Even when, I think you guys are maybe in one too, maybe not.
I can't come to any gatherings for a while. I'm staying in my house, and wearing a mask at all time. People downtown Woodstock have stopped wearing masks. I've counted 41 people on the village green on Saturday evening running around, staying close and not wearing masks. But Miriam and I are going to keep wearing our masks. And I'm not going to, I'm not doing any performances or poetry readings unless it's by Zoom. So I, I'm really hesitant to go out into a public context at this point in time.
Yeah. Well, me too. There's no vaccine. There's no cure. Coronavirus is still out there and it's still deadly.
And it's,
So,
it's very sneaky. We don't know, we don't know the parameters of this disease. And Texas has got a big spike now because they let everybody congregate and go to bullfights or whatever they do down there, and the corona rate is spiking in Texas.
right. So that being said, I guess what I would like to see us plan for the purpose of Ashley setting up Zoom calls. I would like to see us plan to Zoom at least through the end of September. I think we're still going to feel the same way, and I say we because I feel the same way you do, Ed. I think we'll still feel the same way, but I would like to at least say, for the purpose of us planning what we're doing, I'd like to say I would like to see us Zoom through the end of September, and we'll probably keep moving the date out. But for now, I don't see any reason for us to try to not Zoom, until the end of September. So,
Oh yeah, I do forget about that.
so is everybody okay? So Ashley, I'll say to Bill, I'd like us to be Zooming at least through the end of September. Do you have any? Do you think somebody's going to tell us we can't?
Well, you could.
No,
Zoom.
not at all. I mean, we paid for the Zoom, I believe, for a year, so we have through February, and then we can reevaluate then and see if we need to renew it, because it is a yearly renewal. But we've already paid for it, so I don't see any trouble in using this as long as we can.
Right, unless the governor had some meeting that, because there's open meeting law, and I know there was a law that you couldn't, everybody had to be in person. So,
right.
So cool. So anyway, so I'll just, for the purpose of this, say we're at least end of September. At least we're going to Zoom, and we'll revisit this.
Okay, and it's the second and fourth Monday.
It is the second and fourth Monday. And and now we're 6:30. I thank you, Jeff, for joining. Thank you, Michael, for joining. Connor will join us at 6. Connor, I spoke to Connor this afternoon. His work schedule is now later, but he's working from home, and he can't make a 5:30 meeting. He expects to join us at 6. But unless anybody has an issue with the 6:30 time, our new meeting time until further notice is 6:30. So we'll be Zooming the second and fourth Monday of the month at 6:30 until the end of September at least. And that's just what we're doing. And I think that's, we'll probably go longer than that. But anyway, that's where we are. So welcome everybody. Yay, we have a quorum plus. And we might even have everybody. I was a little delinquent. In a perfect world, I'll be getting information out a lot sooner, but I did send about an hour ago the minutes from last meeting, and I sent about an hour ago the agenda for this meeting. And so I'll ask for when in a few minutes, I'll ask for people to, approve and second. So the agenda for this meeting, just what I will say is we don't have speakers for this meeting. If you do look at the zoning agenda thing, now I'm gonna see if I'm allowed to share my screen. I can't share my screen. Ashley, I would ask it, would you let me share my screen?
You should be able to. Let me just double check, make sure it's
Well, it says the host is disabled participant screen sharing.
I think it does that automatically. Let me see if I can do it.
Okay.
Share screen on. Okay, you should be able to share now.
Yay. Okay. So I am going to, I'm just going to share my whole screen. So there we are. So I just want to kind of talk about the future a little bit. So this is the agenda. So you don't need to pull it up if you just want to look at my screen. So I kind of I officially opened the meeting, I think, at, I'll say 5:35 opened meeting. So we'll go through adopting the agenda, approve the minutes. We'll do that. So my hope for today, I'll just go through what I have in here. My hope for today was to talk about what we learned from Jerry Washington, Gavora Funk, and Steve Romine. And since Dave Menzies is our telecommunications volunteer, and I know I had asked if Dave and Ed could work together a little bit about zoning revision ideas. I don't know whether they have or haven't, but we'll see as we discuss that. I don't have another speaker for this meeting, but on the next meeting in 2 weeks, Kirk Ritchie. So Ashley, I keep calling to make sure you're there because I know you're teaching besides. So you're still there, Ashley?
Yes, I'm here.
Yes. Okay. So Kirk Ritchie should also be included on the Zoom invitation for our next meeting. But the Woodstock Housing Committee is looking to speak with us. And so that'll be Kirk Ritchie. I don't know whether Susan Goldman's joining, but I do have them on the agenda to come talk with us about housing. So that's another couple of items we can look at.
And you reach out to Susan Goldman to see if she come. She's really good on affordable housing. I've heard her talk to you guys on the town board. She's very eloquent.
And I've been on committees with her. She is indeed. Okay.
So if she's in town, she would be a good adjunct to have with Kurt.
Right. Okay. A total 100% agreed. 100% agreed. So I will do that.
You want me to send to both of them then?
Sure. Yes, please. So yes, send to Susan Goldman and Kirk Ritchie. And Susan hasn't committed she's going to speak with us. Kirk Ritchie has committed, but certainly also invite Susan to invite. Make notes here, Kirk and Susan. And I'll try to reach out to Susan. And if you did have a phone number, since this meeting can be listened to by others, I would not ask that you tell me your phone number on this meeting, although you could text it to me maybe if you wanted, or email it to me so that I can easily reach out to Susan. But that's a very good point. Other people that we can be having come speak to us is Connor had mentioned David Lax, because we had guests talking about scenic overlay, and David Lax can discuss drone photography. So we can pick a time frame of when we'd like to be inviting David Lax. And then at some point, when we don't have speakers to come in, at any time we can talk about the proposed neighborhood commercial light industrial zoning law changes. So I don't see us doing that in June. And we'll invite Kurt, and we can decide amongst ourselves, what do we do in terms of, we can either deep dive in an area and have the whole team work on it. For example, even though David and I know I'd asked if Ed would work with him on the telecommunications, maybe the whole team does a deep dive on telecommunications so we can get it going, because people in town are very concerned about, let's take our stand as a community. So that may be something that stands alone, so we can talk about that. But anyway, these are guests coming up, and we can pick time frames for the different guests coming up. And that's that. So we're looking at the agenda. Do I have anybody who would like to make a motion to approve the agenda?
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
Thank you, David. Anybody want a second?
I'll second it. I don't care.
Yeah. That was enthusiastic, Ed. Thank you. Okay. And I don't know whether you're looking at the minutes, but I can pull up the minutes from before and you can look at my screen. I do recognize that when I show something, it'll look a lot smaller to you, so I can zoom in if you would like me to do that. Last meeting started a little late because we
zoom in here.
Can you see it, David?
I'm looking just to see if I can make it larger, but the status.
Well, I'll tell you what, I can make it larger.
Well, that's not necessary.
Well,
I just wanted to. No, look at that.
It'll save you looking for this in your, there we go. And there it
Oh,
is.
there you are.
Yeah, it's larger. Okay. Oh, and I will close this thing. That'll help. All right. So, yes. Meeting began, adopted agenda and minutes. I just talked to you about telecommunications findings. And actually, another question for you, and I think I had called you or something. Anyway, I didn't know if, how do we get the recording? Because I know that you had said before you were recording. Are you recording this meeting as well?
Yes, all meetings are recorded.
And how does one access the recordings?
I can send it to you. I have to put it on Google Drive because it's a large file, so I can't email it. I can do that. I have to do it from work because it's on my work computer. So I'll be here tomorrow.
Well, so if we want to access any recordings, then they're on a Google Drive, but we can't get to them from the town website.
No, what I could do is if you want me to post them on YouTube, I don't have anywhere that accepts videos on the website. I can't put them on the website anywhere, but I could put them on YouTube and send you the link to YouTube if you prefer that.
Well, if they're on a Google Drive, is a Google Drive something that's on a server that I can get to, or is it on your personal? If it's on
the Town of Woodstock Google Drive. I can see if there's like a way to share it so you could search for it, but I have to download it onto the Google Drive, and then I have to put you as a sharer.
You would have to put each of us on the committee if we each wanted to look at it?
Yeah, I'd have to go in there and put each of your emails.
Why don't you just put it on YouTube?
Yeah, how big a deal is it to put it on YouTube?
It's easy. I do that every week for the town board meetings, and I've been doing it for the planning board meetings so that they have easy access to it. So I could certainly do that.
So if it's on YouTube, then we just search YouTube.
You just get there.
Yep. And you can actually, Town of Woodstock has a YouTube like channel, so you could search for our channel and it should be listed right in there.
Okay, because and I would like the Steve Romine meeting to go up there because he gave us a whole pile of information, and so I think it'll be helpful. So don't worry about the Google Drive then, but if you can put it on the YouTube channel, Ashley, and send me a link, although you could also send the committee here a link.
Okay, yeah, I can send it to all of you. I have you all saved as a group, so.
Okay, send me a link. Okay, just send okay, so that's good. Okay, and we're in the minutes here, which you guys can be reading if you choose. Yeah, and this may, and I don't know exactly how long our meeting was last time. I said we adjourned at approximately 7 p.m. We started at 5:45, and who knows beyond that. So anyway, I didn't write down the time that we adjourned, but hopefully that's okay for state record keeping. So anyway, so do I have anybody? Do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
Yay, Jeff, thank you. Anybody want a second?
Second.
Thank you, David. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Oh, and all in favor of approving the agenda. I never asked if we were all in favor.
Aye.
Aye. Yay. Okay. Okay, so we've done that. So then the next order of business really then is, and I will come out of here and I'm going to resume it to 100% because we're finished with that. So it was my hope again, I'll go to 150. So in this meeting, it was my hope again to talk about telecommunications. Did David or Ed, did you guys do any work on that, or what do you think that? Oh, go ahead.
Well, I think we all saw what the communications committee said, and I think we should go in that direction, that they were against 5G.
Right.
Well, they said 4 in their recommendations, all the committee members agreed that fiber optic cabling will be needed in Woodstock without the use of 5G.
Mhm.
So David has compiled 8 sample ordinances from around the country, including New York,
Mhm.
about governing antennae and wire services, and the issue of putting whip antennae and 5G antennae on the side of telephone poles and central Hudson poles and housing would be addressed. And I have pulled down all the language from our zoning law related to antennae, and 2, wireless providers. And we are working on finding language that is consistent with the federal law to add to our zoning law that will discourage the overuse of antennae through 5G, and yet encourage other forms of wireless telecommunications to occur. So we'll come up with a draft language for this law change within the next 2 or 3 meetings.
Okay. Other. Okay. In next 2 to 3 meetings. Okay. So, and being the project manager that I am, I always check out the calendar and then say, oh, when is that then? So it wouldn't be June. And then July, we have a meeting on the 13th and the 27th. So might it be the 27th, or would you rather pick an August meeting?
I think August would be more likely, because David and I have to polish this language up and make it legal.
Right.
You know, you can pass a moonbeam law, but
Right.
if somebody sues or does an Article 78, or then the law gets tossed out. So we want to have language that will withstand legal challenge.
I'm agreed with you 100%. I guess my question is, though, in the process of formulating that, does it make sense to draft something, have the committee give their opinions on it, and then massage it based on committee opinions, and then take it to a lawyer? Because if you take it to a lawyer, I would think that you want to take it to a lawyer. You certainly need to take it to a lawyer at some point, but
Everybody on the committee will have to vote on whatever we decide to propose as law changes. So everybody in the committee will be free to write a rebuttal we agreed. If the majority decides to do something and somebody doesn't like it, they can register an opinion to go along with our recommendation. I mean, all we can do is recommend something to the town board, who will refer it to the town attorney and any other legal people they want to refer it to. But
Right, okay.
I think David and I will do a draft, and we'll show it to the committee, and anybody can read and change and propose alterations or challenge something or say that something's incomplete or we want to make sure it's clear. We don't want to do any gibberish. We want to do a clear, concise set of regulations that will discourage 5G while encouraging the regular needs of Woodstock residents for telecommunications, wireless transmitters and so forth.
Right. Okay. That all sounds perfect to me, and you're working on it, and I thank you both very much for doing that. Okay. So in terms of, again, we don't have speakers for today. We'll be having Kirk Ritchie on housing, and maybe Susan Goldman. I'll have to see if we have Susan Goldman or not. So I guess the other things that we have a choice of is we definitely do have a choice of, and this is what we work on next, we can go into neighborhood commercial because we have the document. It's really whenever we want to start looking at that, we can start diving into that. But the other things that we have, I have the action plan here, which I have not, I do need to spiffy that up. But so the summary of what we're doing, this is because the action plan has the detail, and I didn't really finish getting my notes in from even when Jerry Washington was here. But that leads me to the other question I had is Jeff, how do I get a copy? Because you had made a copy of, you made an audio recording when Jerry Washington was here, and David, you had a video, although it didn't have the entire meeting.
I
So
didn't get the whole time. Yeah, I didn't get the whole meeting.
right, but Jeff, how would we get a copy of your audio, which I think was on your phone?
Let me figure that out and get back to you. That's a good question.
Okay. How to get new audio. And that's from the, that would be, it would be from March. I think it was March 9th meeting. Okay. Because even if we don't have David's video, because your audio was for the whole meeting, so that, and it's just good to have records in case anybody wanted to go back to what was said. So that sounds, that
Well, you
sounds
got
great.
the video from it's, Zoom. You got a Zoom video with that.
That was prior to Zoom. That was the meeting that we did at the town offices.
Yeah, it would have been March. It would have been, and that was the meeting
Just
where you brought,
before, yeah.
yeah, you would have brought your camera.
Oh,
And David, that
right,
was me.
okay. We weren't doing Zoom, right? Okay.
Right.
Correct. So we would have Jeff's audio, and we would have the part of the meeting that you caught on video. So if I can have Jeff's audio, that's probably good. So the things that we, and this has who's on things, because this is a question of, so these are the 13 items we have, and periodically reviewing the zoning law 13 is really what we're doing all the time here. So that's kind of a big umbrella. Number one, we can do that anytime because I had passed out what the documentation is for that. I know, Jeff, if I were to pull out the things like you had said, you would look into large parcel areas in RDC and renewable energy. I don't know if we want to be diving into those things. Ed, I know natural resources, we're really waiting until Ken Panza comes to us. So we're not diving in, and you're already heavily working on the telecommunications. So I think that, and part of my screen moving is my cat is moving my mouse. So I'm just running through these just to see. So, and then David, I know you, well, David, you're in telecommunications, sorry. So Connor and I were housing, so we're going to have a speaker for that coming up. Michael, you had parking and special permit uses. We didn't have anybody who was jumping into site plan renewal and approval. Shared workspace, I put my name on there, but it really hasn't been started yet. So we've really started telecommunications. We've really started scenic overlay. We're going to be, I've already been to one housing meeting and we're having a speaker on housing. Do we as a committee want to be starting up things? So we're going to have housing come at our next meeting. Then we have July that we could be focused on something if we wanted. And then we have August when we're hoping to dive in telecommunications further. So do we have a hope for what we work on in July? We could work on the zoning law changes because everybody has them. I can resend them and we could work on that. What do we want to work on in July?
You need to have Ken Panza come in to talk about the water system in Bearsville, the nitrates, and the issue of the aquifer protection overlay before you discuss a light industrial rezoning in Bearsville, which might have an impact on the aquifer and on the water supply. Because when I met at the water superintendent's office a couple of months ago, the guy from the health department raised the issue of the rezoning proposal for Bearsville possibly having an impact on the town wells. So we need
Okay.
to have Ken Panza come in. He's a reasonable guy, and he will
Yes.
present the equal, you know, without biasing in any direction, but just dealing with the facts. And I think Panza should come in and make a presentation possibly before we take up the issue of the rezoning of those 2 light industrial districts in Bearsville.
Okay, and thank you, and okay, good input. I'll reach out to Ken. You wouldn't happen to know how soon he would be ready to come work with us?
He has a lot of material on his computer, and we are pretty. I haven't read the latest health department email, but I think it's moved fairly far along. You know, you have the sets of wells are split with housing in between the 2 wells, sets of wells. So it's a judgment call on whether you can have more development in Bearsville that will impact the water supply, because that water supply needs to service us for another 100 years.
Longer.
Yeah, well, or 200 years, 500 years. Anyway, so I think Ken, if you want, I'll contact Ken. He and I are in pretty close email contact, and I could ask him when he would feel comfortable making a presentation.
I would love it if you would do that. If you're willing to reach out, if you can reach out to Ken, and then just.
And I'll let you know, or the committee know I'll forward whatever he answers in email form.
Perfect. Okay, so look for email from Ed. Okay. From Ed, and that would be perfect. Okay. So other things that we, I know that, you know, Connor was interested in the scenic overlay trees. We've already had a speaker there, and Connor should be joining us momentarily. So of the things that so we're not going to deep dive into number 1 yet, because we're, in fact, I'm going to put in progress, but waiting for 3. I'm going to update this right now, but waiting for number 3. Not yet started. Waiting for speaker. Waiting for a speaker. And I'm going to do a save as, because I want to put today's date in here. So it is 6:08. Okay. Waiting for speaker. So are we, and I appreciate what you guys are doing for telecommunications. We would need Connor to see if he's waiting on things for scenic overlay. So again, Jeff, you had number 2 and number 5. So my question is, what do we want to dive into in July? So one option is we can see what Kirk has to say in 2 weeks, and maybe we dive into housing in July, or we can start looking at either Jeff's items, large parcel RDC, or renewable energy, or we can look at Michael's items, parking and special permit uses. So
I would suggest the large parcel RDC has some connection with the housing piece. And if we can kind of consider those, you know, part of fixing housing problems is adding more houses, and to do that you need space, and that might be a large parcel / RDC piece.
Okay, so consider with numbers 7A and 7D. Okay. So we'll see when we'll see what Kirk tells us, and Susan, if she can attend.
Yeah, you may have some opinions on the large parcels and what can be done with them to impact housing, or may not. We'll see.
Yeah, okay. And then, so renewable energy, do you have any thoughts of whether that can be started or?
We could start that too. There's nothing that would hold that back.
Okay.
Mostly it's a question of there's very little in the zoning code about that relates to renewable housing other than I think trees are allowed to be cut for solar power. Is I think all that I remember seeing, and I could have that backwards, but I think it's that the trees can be cut for solar power, which might not be what we want. And there's nothing about stopping, preventing, or allowing large windmills on top of the overlay, as far as I know. So I don't, the issues are probably around large towers that produce wind power or clear cutting land or cutting land for solar. And those are the costs of solar. The costs of wind is the visual impact and the land use impact, right? So I think that's the discussion is renewable power more important than those costs? And what level of cost are we willing to take for that? I really appreciate the solar power being on the Sawrees dump. It's a great place for it. And, I don't appreciate it when I've seen other areas clear cut to produce solar. That's a problem for me personally. And so I think we can look at that and maybe get some input from, I'm not even sure who's a good source to find those kinds of things. I can also look at the neighboring towns that have banned solar, just because of the land use issues around it. I think there's some in Greene County, and I think there's some in Ulster County south of us. I think Gardner's done it, for example, and see what they've done.
Okay. So, and I see we have Connor. So welcome, Connor. We have a full house, which is great. So let me go back to the summary for a minute, and let me just bring Connor up to speed. So Connor, we have made a couple of decisions about meeting times. Based on your schedule, we are going to have future meetings until further notice. We'll start at 6:30 to align with your availability. So I think we'll be doing that. And we're going to Zoom, even though Ashley, who is, as you see, Town of Woodstock, that's Ashley, who is our hostess for today in terms of, she's our Zoom hostess. So she was saying, well, we could be in phase 4 of coronavirus reopening as early as July, but we had a conversation, and the consensus that I heard was we want to keep Zooming because I myself am in a risk group, and I think I'm not the only one who's in a risk group. And sure, we may open as a community because of coronavirus, but those of us that are in a risk group, we just as soon isolate. Not that we like to isolate. I'm not happy with it, but we want to be safe, and that's the priority. So we're going to plan Zooming, and so our plan is we're going to Zoom at least until the end of September. I'm expecting we'll extend that later, but for now we'll just say at least till the end of September we're going to Zoom these meetings, and we'll be at 6:30.
That all makes sense.
Yeah, and it'll be 6:30 until further notice, and so that's what was there. So we were going.
I appreciate that, everyone.
Yeah, well, I appreciate you being here. So we aim to please. We're a dynamic. We do what makes sense. That's what's good about this.
Very good.
We can do what makes sense. So we were talking about what we're working on next. We talking about. Let me just scroll up a little bit here. So I was making notes of what's waiting for what. Even though we have the documentation to review for this item 1, we want to wait for number 3. Number 3, we're waiting for a speaker, and Ed has volunteered to reach out to Ken Panza, so we don't know when we'll be working on 3. We do have Kirk Ritchie, and I'm not sure if Susan Goldman will join him, but I will ask. But Kirk Ritchie is going to come talk about housing at this meeting in 2 weeks. So our next meeting has a speaker, Kirk Ritchie, in 2 weeks. So the question I had is, And then we also talked about the work done on telecommunications. Ed and David gave a report on their thoughts there. And Ed had offered that he does believe that in August, they will have some drafts of language, zoning language that can be reviewed with our committee in August. So we know we have housing going to come talk to us in 2 weeks. And then August will want to focus on telecommunications and do reviews and start moving that along. And that really leaves July. And my question to the group that we're going through right now is, what do we want to do in July? And we were just talking about Jeff's item for renewable energy. We might be able to do that. But Connor, I know that you had hoped to bring David Lax in as a speaker, and we hadn't given a date yet for that. But
yeah,
Dave,
he's been self-isolating pretty hardcore. I imagine he is more than capable of zooming in. So I guess now that things are rolling again, it would be a good idea to reach back out to him and see what we can make happen there. So if it's still the prerogative to do that in July, I'll be happy to reach out.
well, so if we wanted July to be, I mean, we have, it's all up to us how we proceed. One way is to proceed and try to do a whole pile of stuff in parallel. And my belief is, if we try to do too much in parallel, we're not going to get there. But since we have Ed and David working on telecommunications, which is excellent, I think we can have another team of people working on, one or more people working on other stuff. And I know, Connor, you've got scenic overlay, your item, but then also housing is coming up, which is also your item.
Yes.
And that's coming up starting in 2 weeks. So maybe it's too much to try to bite off scenic overlay and housing. So
I don't mind one way or the other, because David's speaking is going to be pretty specific. It's not like I don't think it's going to open up a ton of new questions. It's just going to address one specific aspect of something we discussed regarding, documenting the current state of a site plan.
right. And now, so for scenic overlay and trees, we did have Michael Veach and I'm picturing her. Cindy Muro. Yes, thank you. So we did have them. So are there things holding up us proceeding with number 4, scenic overlay trees? So I'll have David Lax talk, but then we've already had Cindy and Michael. So what is your hope in proceeding with number 4? Is it your hope to go off and look to write some zoning language, or your hope to partner with Ed, who is our subject matter expert on zoning language, who's kind of busy with David right now? But what is your hope for proceeding with number 4?
I suppose what I'd like to do is hear from David, start drafting up some language, and then run that by Ed and the rest of the board. I mean, I of course want everyone's input, but certainly don't want to be cumbersome. At some point, before we jump back into the regular flow of things, I wanted to bring up one quick thing about telecommunications, just in case nobody did. So maybe you can tell me when is an appropriate time for that.
Oh, well, go ahead. We're hanging loose here. Go ahead.
Okay, sure. So the short of it is, ever since the Rona hit, I've been fortunate to be working from home, and while it has left me largely uninterrupted and honestly in a pretty good place, it's made me think about the future of our telecommunications infrastructure. I mean, there could very well be a continued, beyond any social distancing measure, there could be continued remote work. There's a lot of benefits to it, and there's certainly a lot of support for it. And one thing I wanted to ask, if was brought up or if was going to be pursued, was the idea of the town buying back its poles. Because the one thing I wanted to really sort of hit home from there was we were dealing with a lot of different ideas for how we can bring internet to remote areas of the town, remoter areas of the town. But one thing I also just want to put in everyone's ear is now, especially now that I'm part of this constituency, there is going to be a group of people who depend on that connection for their livelihood. And
Mhm.
so so doing the best that we can, not only to streamline it to be as efficient as possible, which I think is the I'll say the happy upside of buying back the poles and burying the cable. But by burying the cable, we protect the signal so that, you know, if a tree falls down, you don't have, I don't know, several hundred people or whatever it is, you know, not able to work for several hours.
Well, I think that we're not, let me just, I made a leap here, but that might not have been what you wanted. You're thinking if we buy back the poles, we can use those poles for some other thing, for some other kind of connectivity that takes wire and not 5G. So you're thinking if we are buying back the poles, that that we can be using them for cable in addition to electricity.
Honestly, I think I know this is a little bit, you know, forward, but I think we could scrap the poles entirely and bury our utility cables
Along
because
two,
it's safer. It's easy. It's often easier to service. It doesn't require as much, you know, specialty vehicles. All you need is a VFL and a couple technicians. And like I said, while I think 5G is probably right at the bottom of my list of upsides for fiber, you also have, you know, strength and connectivity. But the number one thing for me is by burying the poles, maybe not even just the telecommunication poles, but the power cables as well. You know, you can protect them from a lot of the damage that they incur on an annual basis, and therefore the remote workers from the interruptions that those cause.
Well, I agree with everything there's the perfect world and there's the real world. In the perfect
Sure.
world, I agree with everything that you're saying. In the real world, we just totally dug up a summer ago, 2 summers ago, whatever it was, we just totally dug up Route 212 and we didn't bury the cables at that point in time. So I don't think it's realistic to expect that we're going to be burying the cables anytime soon because you would be digging up 212.
Yeah.
And,
Well,
and
I'm not sure if those are things like, I know that, and I'm just throwing it out there, you know, there's all types of special conduit that this can be run. I'm not sure how accessible the sewers are and stuff like that, but there's all kinds of options that could be pursued. And the only reason I want to bring it up is just because, you know, we have been hit with a sort of the 500-year storm, I guess, or maybe just we'll call it the 100-year storm of pandemics. And we should really be thinking about our infrastructure and what'll, you know, and making this town friendly to remote workers is going to, I think, be a good thing in the long run.
So Connor, you know, I agree with you entirely that that's something to really think about, but that's more of an issue of basically, is the town going to take over the telecom infrastructure in town? Or not just the telecom, electrical too, right? So that's more of a public utility question than it is a zoning question, which I'm all for public utilities. I think they can operate much more efficiently and serve the people more than serving profit. But
well, I have to say, it was, you know, during the telecommunications meeting where we discussed how the town owns its own tower and how unusual that is,
yeah.
But it seems to have put us in a unique position to bargain when the times do come. So I think it's all, if not maybe for this table, then something that we can all just have in the back of our heads, because I think there's a unique opportunity here to be ahead of the curve.
Yeah, and I agree. I think that to get telecom into this part of the country, it's going to need to be public because private companies aren't doing it. That's just the way I see it personally. And
yeah, I don't think Verizon is going to swing down and just, you know, install a bunch of fiber optic cable. And, you know, I'll tell you what, I can remove myself from the sale process, but I'm sure if the town of Woodstock, you know, got, you know, serious about looking into running its own fiber, I would be able to, you know, hook them up with someone at MarkerTech who could really get into the nuts and bolts of exactly what that would mean. And I know there's a lot of fondness for the town and with the higher ups over there at Marker Tech, so I'm sure they'd be willing to work to make it happen. I think it'd be a great pairing.
Well, I think so. I mean, there's short term and there's long term. It'd be wonderful if we had a long term strategy that said we are going to bury the cables. That would be a great long term strategy. I don't see it as realistic for the short term, because not only do you have to have a place to run the cable underground, but you have to figure out a way to go from above ground, the buildings that sit above the ground, to reach down into the underground to get to it. So I do think it's a wonderful idea, and maybe it's a long-term strategy to get there. I don't know as I see it. I'd hate to see us wait for that before we try to spread our connectivity throughout the town, because I do think we waited for that.
Of course not. But for example, though, if we are to run cable into more remote parts, if that were something that came up, or maybe it's something that we can think about looking into in terms of starting from the other end. Just because it's not something I could go personally install myself, but I could tell you that there are very simple ways to make fiber to copper conversions in the field, so that essentially, you start with fiber maybe on one end, and you can work back from there. So as you replace your copper, you're essentially just moving a converter box down the signal path. But in any event, I just wanted to bring that up. I don't want this to be the sole focus of our discussion tonight. So.
Yeah. Okay. Well. So back to the question at hand then is, so what are we focused on in July? One thing that we might focus on is housing, because we have Kirk coming in 2 weeks. One thing that we could focus on is scenic overlay. We've already had visitors, and like you said, Connor, you want to hear from David Lax, and then work on a write-up. So maybe we invite David Lax to come in July.
Aren't I supposed to ask Ken Panza to make an appearance in July?
Right.
Oh, well, July, if he can come in July. So yes, yeah. If Ken Panza can come in July, that would be great.
I'm going to ask him tonight, and we'll get an answer right away. But I wrote down that you wanted me to ask him for July, and that's what I'm going to do.
Okay, so the choice would be 13th or the 27th.
All right.
Can visit 7, 13, or 27. Okay. And thank you for clarifying. I knew you were going to ask him whether he would visit, and if we pin down. Okay. So now other things. So renewable energy could start, we're saying. And then Michael, you had 2 things. You had parking and special permit uses. Are there things that we have to wait on? And I think we shouldn't start too many things at once. And it looks like we'll know when Ken Panza is or isn't coming. And what you could really do, Ed, when you talk to Ken, is ask him which meeting he wants. We're the 2nd and 4th Monday. If July doesn't work, pick a month. So we'll know pretty soon when he picks.
Okay.
Thanks. And then, Michael, is there anything holding us up from starting conversations on parking or special permit uses?
No.
Okay.
Nope.
So that could be a July possibility.
Yeah, let's do that. That's fine.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm just going to write down July possibilities. And if Ken Panza says yes, we can move in that direction. But
I think, yeah, that sounds good.
So July possibilities, number 1 is Ken Panza. Number 2 is, well, although if Ken does not come, do we want to consider David Lax? We can move into Jeff's renewable energy. We can move into Michael's parking and special permit uses. We can deep dive into scenic overlay trees, get David Lax in, and then move there. So do we want to bring David Lax in July? Maybe Ken gets one meeting and David gets the other meeting, because once David comes, Connor can start working on what he's doing for zoning revisions for number 4.
And really, I don't expect David to take up an entire meeting. I'm sure if we're if we're all relatively sure of what we want to ask him, like for me, it's more about
yeah, I think if he can take up half a meeting, and we can take 1.5 meetings for the aquifer, if that can happen So I think that's got to be done early.
Yeah,
The base,
okay.
because basically what I'm going to be asking him is about pricing and like altitude restrictions,
Mhm.
those kind of things.
Oh, right. Okay. Pricing, altitude.
And also maybe I don't know what the proper, photographer term for it is, but how wide of a shot he can take versus how high he can fly. Like could he take?
Right.
Would it be a composite image of essentially how many acres can he get in one shot?
Mhm.
Would be the crux of it.
Right. Okay. It would be composite or one wide shot, one wide question mark shot. Okay. All right. So then the other July possibilities would either be three. It would either be number 5, number 8, or number 9. But then depending on what Kirk Ritchie shows us, if Kirk Ritchie gives us a complete set of information, then we may just keep focusing on housing. So that's another thing, housing based on Kirk's presentation, which is going to be 6/22. Okay. All right. So we can go a lot of different directions for July then. So, okay. So we have Kirk coming next. We're going to have an idea of when Ken can come join us. And David Lax, I guess I'm thinking we'll want to know when Ken can join us because David Lax then could pick another time. And as you say, it wouldn't be the whole meeting. So we could be doing work on other stuff at the same
Maybe
time
let
frame.
me know. Let's let Ken respond before I reach out to David. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's good. So
I'll wait to hear from you guys.
Yep. So okay. So I feel like we're good. I know we like to have hour-long meetings. We like to not go beyond that. So I think that we have a plan, and we have status from David and Ed, which I appreciate. Are there more things people want to talk about at this call? So we'll kind of hang loose to see what we're doing in July because we'll know more in 2 weeks, and then we'll figure out what we're doing in July. But anything else that we want to talk about on this call? Okay.
Nope.
As always, I thank you all for your. I heard somebody say something. I think we're good.
That was a nope. Sorry.
No, I heard your nope, and I thought I heard somebody else. I might have heard a cough. So anyway, okay. I think we are good for this meeting. Thank you all for joining. We had a full house today. Thank you,
Yes.
Ashley, for hosting our call. And we have a short-term plan and kind of a long-term plan. What else was I thinking? Oh, I guess we should have a motion to adjourn. We kind of skipped that last time. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
So hey, there's Connor. Yay! Second.
Yes.
Second.
I heard everybody second, right? Was that Jeff?
Not me, I didn't second.
Second, third, and a fourth.
Oh, I'm sure it wasn't Jeff. It was Michael. Michael, did you second?
Yep, it was my call.
Yes, I did.
Yay, Michael. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Yay. Okay. So thank you all very much, and I'm glad that we had that kind of time off because coronavirus, we weren't doing anything, and then we had the one meeting in May, and I feel like we're restarting. So I thank everybody for their part of the restart and for what they're doing. So. Okay, have a good, everybody doing okay? I guess I didn't ask how everybody's doing. Everybody doing okay?
Very good. Yes.
We hanging in there and we're isolated.
Yep.
I was born for this.
Well, there you go. It's the introvert's delight.
Yes.
I'm not saying you're an introvert, but anyway.
I'm an introverted extrovert.
There you go. A little of both in all of us, I think. So.
Yeah.
Okay.
Talk
good.
to you guys soon.
Yeah. All right. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye. Thanks.